Hello and welcome to the Playing Arts Podcast, where we put the spotlight on artists in our community. I'm your host, Andy Needham, and this week my guest is Luke Choice, who also goes by the name Velvet Spectrum. Luke has over 15 years of experience in the creative industry and founded Velvet Spectrum in 2014 to further develop his style and evolve his ability to tell visual stories. What's clear from looking at Luke's portfolio is that it is extremely diverse, with a range of work that includes 3D typography, AR experiences, and murals. And I'm really looking forward to learning more. So it's my pleasure to welcome Luke to the show. Hey, how you doing, Luke?
Thanks for having me, Andy. Appreciate it.
I can see, well, we've spoken a little bit, and you've literally just moved into that new space. It is your background now.
You can tell it's just sort of arranged to make it look like I have shit in my office, but it's I'm just going to sort of vibe it out for a couple of days and figure out where things go. But yeah, I had to bring some stuff in to try and minimize the amount of echo that was going on.
Right. Yeah. Still a bit reverby, but
Yeah.
At least
it's awesome. I'm out of my house and I have my own space, so yeah, it's going to be a game changer.
I was going to say, what was it that prompted that decision to kind of make this move? Because it's a pretty decent sized space, isn't it? You've got a post up on your Instagram, and it looks like it's pretty significant. So
yeah, I mean, it's no bigger or smaller than I need, so it's perfect. I got my desk in here now, and we'll get a standing desk for my wife to set up her thing beside me, and there's actually a big gymnasium just outside the door here. So it's like a historic building from Astoria that they've been renovating for years. And they decided to put 2 studio spaces where the old basketball ring used to be. So I've got old markings from the basketball court, but it's about 100 years old, the original building.
Wow.
So yeah, we just heard about it, talking to the people at the bakery next door. So we were like, oh, put us in contact. So we just sort of sat by for a year waiting until the space was finished. But it finally is, and I could move in over the break. But I really didn't want to go back to work, so I took a few extra weeks off.
That's nice. I mean, this is so bit of a game changer then. I know exactly what you're talking about. Having this kind of space that is detached from the house and gives you a kind of place to go to work, and then a place to leave that work behind is important, I think. And maybe we'll kind of touch on the balance of work and life a bit later on. But let's kind of go back a bit, I guess, because I said at the beginning, you founded Velvet Spectrum in 2014, but there's obviously been some time before that. So, where does it all begin for you?
Yeah, I guess to back before design, I left high school, had no clue what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to do any further education. I really didn't gravitate to, schoolwork and that sort of way of learning. So I took a couple of years off and worked in landscaping, demolition, just sort of odd jobs in construction. And, it kind of got to the point where I was like, I have to figure something out. I have to find more of a creative outlet to, fill my days with. And I found just an advertising course that covered every aspect of advertising. That was just a year, and computer course was one of the smallest aspects of that, but that was where I heard about Photoshop. So I think I was about 21 or 23. And no, 23, I finally got a job. And then just doing gas station promo posters, it was really basic stuff. But immediately at that point, I was like, I have to learn more, and just spent my evenings from that point trying to build my own portfolio on MySpace. So that kind of dates me a little bit.
Yeah, right.
But it was MySpace back in the day, just doing fake album covers and fake gig posters and things like that. And then I was just hustling, trying to find any work I could. And managed to get a good connect with Ministry of Sound in Australia.
All right.
So then that was the first break I had was pitching on an album cover, and then I won that, and then it was just enough to let me go freelance full time for a couple of years after that. And then I actually left Australia, and then that was, I mean, I'd say I founded Velvet Spectrum as like my freelance sort of alias.
Yeah.
But, you know, like 2014 was when I started to take it seriously in this sort of iteration of what it is now. But yeah, I left Sydney, I moved to Brighton, I spent a year there, and then I was working in London. I moved to Brighton to work at Chichester. So I was working at McFall's studio there for about 2 months, and then it was like I flew from Australia for that job, and then
wow.
He closed the studio within a couple of months of me getting there. So it was a bit like, yeah, I was stranded in Brighton, and then I got a job in London. So I was commuting like 4 hours a day, and I was just like, this is awful. I had to like change of pace, and my first wife, Vanessa, she had a job in internship offer in Cambodia. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm kind of like at a point where I just need like a change of pace. This didn't work out the way I wanted. And so we moved to Cambodia for a year, and that was where I just sort of like freelance for Ministry of Sound doing things. And then in the afternoons, I just do C4D tutorials, like grayscale gorilla stuff. So
right.
You know, that was really where it started. Again, it was just sort of like after hours, like learning stuff, trying to build up that portfolio.
Yeah.
And then there was an ad on Twitter for a job at Fault 49. And so I applied for that. And then I moved to New York for 5 years and spent it there.
Right. Yeah. Because they have a London office as well, right? So
they do now. Yeah. Yeah. That was happening just as I was leaving. And I mean, like, it was the best experience. Like, I worked with so many guys who had sort of come from all different areas, and we all just sort of like found a family together because, you know, we all just sort of did the same thing of moving to New York and trying it out. So, you know, some of my best friends have gone on to do amazing things, and, you know, it's great to see we're all sort of like of a similar, you know, cloth, that we're all just trying to hustle now on our own and do our own thing. So, yeah.
That year that you took out to kind of learn and get the 3D skills down, like, you know, it's kind of like a sabbatical almost. I don't know, like a kind of So, you know, how did that sort of set up the rest of your career, do you think?
I mean,
is that like a defining year for you, really? You know,
it really was. It was one of those years where I was like, oh, you know, I can take a risk and it pays off. And I kind of like, I had no intention of staying away from home for so long. It's been over 11 years now. I remember telling my wife at the time, I was like, all right, I'll give you 18 months. I want to be back home in Australia. Like, and she's like, okay. And then, you know, it's just been one thing after another. I've lived in like 5 states in America now, and finally, like, we bought our house and sort of settled down and investing time here. So it's been a real like confidence in taking risks and really just like backing myself. And it was always about like creating my own value. Like, what's my value? How do I stand above other people in the industry to get jobs? So it was really just like having confidence in the ability to execute the work, but also like just, you know, exposure to different cultures really helped as well. And yeah, I mean, I loved every sort of decision I've made. It's all been pretty like, you know, I don't know, like I moved with a backpack to New York and slept on a blow-up mattress for a few months before I could like, you know, settle down. So, you know, I'm happy to like live with nothing, and it's pretty liberating.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. I had, you took me on another tangent there, you know, and I was just, I'm going to try and wind back my thoughts here just a second. Oh, man, it'll come back to me, dude. Don't worry. Oh, it'll come back. I was actually thinking as well, because you've during this time, have you ever got into doing dailies or anything like that? Were you ever that kind of artist?
I wouldn't say dailies, but I used to just like, I mean, my
weekly, whatever.
Lifestyle in New York was just like, I would go to work, at Vault, and then I'd come home and I'd basically do like another day's work just on my own stuff at night. It was like, I think just leaving New York, I was like, I'm just going to sleep for a few years, really. And that's really like, I've really tried to have a better balance of, work, life, just sleep is so important to me now that even like cutting back on drinking, because I realized like living in New York, you just go to the pub after work and you smash a few pints and then you're like, man, why did I sleep so bad? So now I'm like, I just prefer to like have a little drink and just sort of calm down and not just like go nuts and just like realizing how much better my sleep is for that. It's just keeps it going. But
it sounds like that lifestyle of, even though you were kind of doing it to better yourself, professionally, it wasn't sustainable. And
no.
How long did it take for you to burn out completely?
It actually only took like 2 years, and then I left Vault for the first time, and I was like, yeah, 2 years, like I'm kind of burnt out and I need to go do something else. So I went home to Australia for a little bit, and then I eventually came back to the US and just sort of said to the guys at Vault, like, you don't mind if I just pitch up a desk for a couple of months and like figure my next move out? And they're like, of course. Like, they've always been super supportive at every step. So I ended up just staying for another 3 years after that.
Wow.
It was great. I was like, I really enjoyed the position I had there of, kind of like almost being allowed to like focus on key projects myself, but really taking charge of the interns. And also, like, when I got to Vault, there was no one doing 3D. Mm. So it was really like, it started out because they'd moved into like a paper cut diorama style situation of, work. And that was so much, labor work to build these things. I was like, well, let's just try and fake it in 3D. So we would like pitch to, a lot of magazine covers being like, yeah, we'll do this. And then we would just like fake it. And we'd pretend to take, behind the scenes footage of us cutting stuff. But in reality, it was all just done in 3D. So everyone wanted like that back behind the story sort of thing. We're like, yeah, we'll fake that. Right. And just like, it really just started from that point. And then, a lot of the guys I worked with were all predominantly illustrators. And that was kind of the work that, we're all such fans of Vault 49 at that time for illustration work. So we all came there and, I would just introduce a lot of the guys to 3D, and we ended up just like learning together and sort of growing from that point.
That's cool. I think if you brought that new dimension literally like to their studio, and I guess that kind of cemented your position as well. So no doubt they kind of have that. I guess were they quite a new company at that time as well? Were you?
No, I mean, well, for me, I mean, like Vault 49 was probably one of the first artist design, guys that I ever followed. And it was like, cover the magazines, I'd cut it out and I'd stick it on my corkboard next to my desk.
Yeah.
And,
I remember seeing all this stuff in like computer arts and things like that. And you just,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, computer arts, whatever was in there, I was following. Like I would wait every month for that to come out.
Same.
Yeah. I'd always be at the newsagent just looking for the next issue. And it was like people like Chuck Anderson, No Patton, he was a massive influence on me, just trying to understand how to use Photoshop, like how colors blend together. And, Vault 49, I was loving their collage sort of mixed with illustration style. So, it was those initial years of really trying to figure out what I was into in terms of graphic design, because I really came from just like a love of comics as a kid, like I was a Spider-Man nut and Silver Surfer and all that. So like I see that in my work now as just this kind of like cosmic space opera kind of madness that's just, like Infinity War comic was the first comic I was ever given by my cousin when I was like 6 years old. And I've still got that one. I cut it up and put it on my visual art diary for school, and I still regret it to this day, but I've kept the cutout. I've cut the rest of it. Yeah.
I guess moving back a bit, like, can you now share what a typical day for you is like now? Let's just talk about that for a sec.
Yeah, I guess like my typical day is about to change, but for the last few years, I've just worked from home with my wife, and we like stupidly decided to renovate our house during a quarantine pandemic, and work from it. And I don't know how many times I've just like screamed, just like had to walk out the house. So, like my days, we start like, my wife will cook us breakfast and we'll just sit at the counter and eat breakfast. And then, I'll start, at least I feel like if I'm not at my desk by 9, I've already lost the day. Really, it's just one of those things now where it's like you can't even get behind on the emails. And it is one of those things, we spoke yesterday a little bit about just, I have a lot of trouble letting go of any control around the business and, relinquishing any of the artwork stuff. So it's always been about just taking on everything just to have complete, final say. And sometimes I don't always keep up with every aspect that I should. And sometimes the artwork is, my priority, but, I need to be better about the actual daily responding to emails and keeping up on that. And it's just really hard these days because you just don't know which email is actually serious. It's, there's so many that come in and it's like, to whom it may concern. And I'm like, well, you've already lost me.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
It's pretty easy to figure out my name. If you go to the website, it's like the one guy you get. So, I just kind of like, I really don't work that late night shift anymore. I'm sort of done, and we'll throw on a little bit of anime in the mornings with breakfast. We usually watch like Adventure Time every morning or regular show or stuff like that. We always start the day with a cartoon and breakfast.
Got the Art of Ooh behind me, so
Such
a good
God,
book.
we love it so much. Honestly, I would say like Adventure Time was one of those turning points in my own creativity of just sort of really trying to approach my imagination in a new way, where it was like, just really getting in touch with that childhood again and what really like mattered to me. And I just think Adventure Time has just been done so beautifully in terms of like the story and the characters. And I mean, I could just watch it endlessly.
Yeah. It's probably one of the reasons why I keep the kids channels on our package, because you get Cartoon Network with it. So I'm like, well, there's something that at least there's something I can watch.
I do wonder about my neighbors seeing through the window, and they'd be like, they don't have kids. Like, why do they always have these cartoons on?
Yeah. So you've got this kind of separation now, I guess, the work life. So so apart from cartoons and things like that, what are you doing when you're not working?
I mean, that's kind of actually where we're like, I wouldn't even call it a New Year's resolution. It's really like we've sort of dedicated this year, like the last 2 years, to renovating a house, doing work. So it's kind of consumed all of it, and now we're like, all right, I want to learn golf. I don't want to learn fly fishing. So now I'm just trying to like figure out some nice, quiet, very like socially distanced. Not that it's like COVID or anything, but it's just like I'm borderline introvert, extrovert, so I can really exist in both worlds. But I like my peace and quiet, and I just need like long sort of peaceful tasks to tackle now.
Right.
So a bit of golf, bit of fishing sounds perfect, but it's nice. I can just 5-minute walk to the office. It's really peaceful out here. Like, we live in this really small town now. There's only like 10,000 people. It's right on the river. It's a very like small town vibe. So we've really like gotten to know a lot of great people in town, and it's made us want to just like invest more time and energy into it here. But it's about getting out of the house a bit more this year. Yeah,
I think a lot of people are probably feeling a similar way of just wanting to get a bit more back to normal, and just I used to go and do talks for Maxon at NAB in Vegas and things like that, and that was like a kind of annual thing that I always look forward to. And you get to kind of see another, there's, you and I have probably sort of both come from like the motion design community as well, and it's like seeing all those people and just kind of like they are kind of like your online friends, but you get to see them in real life. And it's very similar to the NFT community as well in that regard. So, but but anyway, I'm looking forward to kind of hopefully that getting back to some kind of normality.
Like the talk circuit was one of those things where I was like, oh, man, like I'm very comfortable getting up there and talking, but the lead up to it, it's always like, oh man, I'm nervous, I'm stressed, I'm not. Every single talk I've ever done, I've been in the green room, like typing away, like trying to finish it.
Right, and that's because it's because you care about what you're going to say. I think you have a.
I really try and actually like make sure it's relevant to the audience I'm talking to. Mm-hmm. So I have to kind of like always shift things around, and there's always something new I've done that I'm like, oh, it'll be good to talk about. And it kind of fits the narrative of like, I went from shit to good kind of thing. So it's always just sort of, evolving.
Because you presented at OFF in 2019, the Sevilla, but you also did the main titles for that as well. So that's so cool. Like I'd love to do main titles for a conference. I mean, main titles is like a kind of one of those dream jobs anyway, like where you get to express, a lot of creativity and like how much. I guess we'll pull that up actually. Let's have a look at that. I'm going to see. I've got it here. It's here, isn't it? Is this it? Yeah. Let's just bring that up, and we can play that in the background while we're talking. I'm gonna kill the sound, but on my end, there's probably no sound coming through on the Discord. But just want to talk through this project a little bit.
Yeah. So for me, like even just like I was talking about sleep earlier, it was like this was like an ode to sleep. So it was the idea of like, your two eyes actually falling deeper into sleep to one eye, and then it's this sort of like this dream sequence that was definitely inspired by the original X-Men cartoon. And I was like, I just want everyone to have their own like dope logo that comes on in a really cool fashion, and it just sort of like has this nice sort of fly through effect to it. And there was a few things that went wrong along the way, like a speaker pulled out literally 24 hours before I was getting on the plane to head. So I had to like actually put in Voltron and replace that before I got on stage. So it was it was a little bit chaotic, but it was another one of those things where I was like, man, 3.5 minutes to fill 3D animation all by myself was a task in itself that took months just trying to fit in other projects around this. And I mean, it's just like I've had to like invest so much money to like get better computers, because it's just I've tried to do so many things like that on just like not enough power. So it was really fun. It was just I was like, what do I want to showcase in my work? And it's like, how do I tie together typography and my 3D work? So that's kind of always where my head's at, is like, I love doing typography, and how can that actually be, expanded through my 3D work, and just trying to like showcase a bunch of the different styles.
For sure.
It was great. Actually, it was my wife Morgan got to speak on stage with me for the first time. So we were up there together, and it was a lot of fun. And that was actually the last talk we got to do just before COVID hit. So it was one of those things where it's like I always say yes, because it's just like you never know. And that was one of those times where it was like, I'm so glad I agreed to do that, because I don't know if I'll get the opportunity to experience it the way it was then.
Yep. Yeah. And so you pushed yourself quite a bit with that one, like.
Yeah. I mean, I always take on things that are just more than I can handle, but it's the only way I ever get better.
That's interesting as well, isn't it? Like, do you often? I used to just, I'd say yes and then figure it out later.
Always. Even when I know how to do it, I'm like, man, it's been like 2 years since I've used that tool. Like, I got to look up how to do that again.
Yeah.
So it's just like, that it's like I always say like the hardest thing is just knowing where to look for the information.
Right.
So it's like, and when we started out doing C4D, it was like limited resources, and it was just trying to find like the little nugget that would just give you that motivation to keep going. And full credit to Grayscale Gorilla for like giving me so many like great tips from his videos that just, because I tried numerous times to get through C4D and just give up, and then there was like a little beam of light one day where I was like, oh, that looks better. So now I just sort of kept going. You just need little wins, always little wins.
That was the great thing about Nick's tutorials, is it was basically him kind of learning and then going, this is cool. Yeah. I'm going to share it with everybody, and it's the enthusiasm, the kind of friendly tone it comes across, and it kind of makes it so approachable. And then everyone's like, well, actually, I can do it too.
Yeah. Because I don't know if like other 3D programs out there have a guy like him, but for Maxon, it was great to really just like learn from his resources.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like the Andrew Kramer of 3D, I guess.
Okay, I have heard of that name. Yes.
Well, if you've ever used After Effects, then or people that do use After Effects, it's kind of synonymous.
I'm pretty standard with After Effects.
Right.
I just do like my editing and sort of color grading and stuff in After Effects.
Edit in After Effects? God.
I do. Yeah.
That's painful. Can't even play it back.
Yeah, I mean, I just do all my stuff. Yeah, that's just the thing is like, again, there is definitely a downside to working by yourself, because I learned, exponentially more at Vault 49 because I always had someone to like bounce it off and get feedback, get criticism, get tips. But now it's just up to me to like go out there and look, and it just takes so much time when it's like, I'd rather just be sitting trying to like hash things out in C4D, but the amount of learning you have to do to be competitive and stay relevant and rethink things, it's pretty overwhelming.
It can be, for sure. I think, I don't know, what I tend to do is if I've got something that I want to, that's kind of important to me, or I'm like want to, before I share it or whatever, I need another opinion that isn't, my wife's or whatever. I get, like a professional opinion kind of thing. I'd want some constructive criticism. I'll just jump into one of the Slacks or whatever that I'm in, and I have a couple of people that I trust and I can share things with, and then I just do it that way, and that's been super helpful for like a short film I did that wouldn't have been. It would have been, I don't know, there were things that I just didn't see, and then it's like, oh wow, that's obvious. Like you just need fresh eyes on it, and then but that's it. I think actually a circle of trust.
Yeah, I've discovered that with the rebirth of the Depth Core Collective. So I've actually found on our Discord that's been a really good resource for me this year, is like the collective sort of I guess disbanded would be the best way to say it, in about 2016, just as I was like gearing up to like join it. But I've been friends with Justin Malla for like over a decade, and we've had a couple of nifty drops on our collectives, which has been great. And it's been nice to sort of be able to feed back on other people's artwork and see them respond really well, and have that resource there now. I just need to be better about like getting in there and just sort of asking the questions for help.
Sure. Yeah. I think I want to talk about another project of yours, which for probably a year I saw every day. And every day I turn on my load up Cinema 4D, and I would see the splash screen which you designed for R21.
And I think that was before they started putting actually who the artwork was by on the splash screen. I was just bummed. I was bummed. But I was like, it was definitely like one of those ones where, like I get the biggest kick out of my peers liking my work. It's not about does the world think it's good? It's like, do my mates think it's good? So there was a lot of pressure on this piece. I was like, everyone's going to look at it. Everyone's going to have an opinion. And I really, I tried out some typography stuff, which was cool to see. They've actually done that with R25 now. But had a couple of iterations early on with typography. And, this was just sort of like, I always have this fascination with eyes and just, how much they can communicate and sort of, build characters from that point. I always had all my sketchbooks as a kid were just filled with different eyes, and I would just draw them constantly. It was always like you just give up when you hit the nose. So it was kind of like,
I always start with an eye.
It was just the one thing that was very like, an arm is an arm, it could be anyone's, but I think eyes are just so expressive, and,
sure.
and you can do a lot to them to create a more a richer narrative that people can invent themselves. So it's definitely inspired by a lot of like biometric sort of fusion with nature and science. And you can see like that was that 21 I tried out. It was sort of like heading in that direction. But it was cool because like even the red and the blue iterations there, that was just a couple of earlier options that I'd done, and they were like, oh, can we actually use those for I think it was the road show they were doing and other things like that. So they got used, and it was a real thrill to be. And that was actually the result of speaking at off Vienna. And
oh wow,
I did, I just demonstrated some of like quick C4D tutorial of like some techniques I did, and that guy came up afterwards. He was like, oh hey, like I really like that C4D work you do. Like I actually know the guys at Maxon. I can like email them and introduce you. I was like, really? That'd
cool.
be awesome. Thank you. And he followed up, and I'm just like, I was blown away. And they were like, actually, we have the new splash screen coming up. Do you want to do that? And I was like, oh my God, of course.
That's so cool.
So it was one of those ones that I'll always hold dear for the rest of my career.
That's awesome, dude. And I wanted to find the project that inspired that. Where is it? I think
it was like the Animals series was the first kind of foray into those eyes.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's on there. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, like, it actually started from an X particles experiment where I was just like spewing stuff out, and I was like, there's no concept of what I'm doing here. Like, how do I try and make this, a stronger concept? So I put it in After Effects and put it in a collider, and it just made, sort of cleaned everything up. So then there was some other more simplified versions I did before this, and it just sort of like, all right, that kind of looks like an iris to me. Like, so I just put like this shape over the top. I was like, that's cool. And I'm like, oh, let's do it in 3D. And that's kind of why I always just like bounce around from different programs. I started in Photoshop, I always did Illustrator, and then it was like, when I learned 3D, I just did more 3D. But I always have the skills in other programs to see how they can sort of cross-pollinate and create something different. I'll do something very flat graphic eye, and then I'll do like a super 3D eye, and I'm just sort of like trying to figure out exactly how to make it a little bit different, more interesting.
Yeah. Are there any other defining projects that you've done that you'd like to speak about?
Yeah, I guess like the other one that was sort of similar to the main titles was the VSQ music video I did, which was another one where it was like I had so the Vitamin String Quartet, they do classical covers of famous songs. So this was one of Bjork's songs that they covered. So I mean, if you wanted to check it out, people would go listen to the sound later. But this is kind of where like even my new NFT artwork for Museum of Lucid Dreams is really kind of born from this animation I did. But this was another one of just being like, man, I wish I had some help. But it was like 3 months of, animating work all by myself, and just sort of really just trying to like figure things out for myself and actually learn how to do process better. I think I'm always so scrappy and just really, I'm too slow to, I'm not, up to labeling and naming, and I'm always just so like, oh, that's a good idea. I'll just like tangent, and I'm just like create that, and I'm like, what did I call that? And it's just like, I just need to be better about my process.
I'll come back.
And this was one of those ones. Yeah,
we'll come back to process for sure. Like a bit,
yeah.
You can tell this is you, there's some really key things about your style that are there.
Yeah, I mean, it was really just about trying to like do my personal work in a commission piece where it was they let me just do what I wanted. So it was really about just sort of what would I want to create. So it was just a succession of sort of like patterns and shapes and just trying to do the fly through. But it's not perfect. I see a lot of problems with it now, obviously, but it was a good lesson for me in terms of these sort of long format 3D animations.
Yeah. Isn't that cool that you get to be paid for the personal work kind of thing almost, Yeah,
I think it's definitely a considered approach of like, this is what I want to be doing. I need to put this out in the world. And then somebody will be like, well, I just need you to like change the colors and do this. And yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll get to the Museum of Lucid Dreams soon, because that's a really fun little playground that you have there. We'll come back to the process, I guess. I mean, you've touched on a few of the tools that you're using. Are you ever using them in a particular way, like you're starting in one and then moving into another, or do you kind of just jump around as needed?
Yeah, I think I always had this sort of cyclical process of, again, sort of saying like, if I did something in Photoshop, maybe I could create, brush strokes that I would then bring in with alpha channels, and I would put that in 3D. So it was always like, how can I use my skill set there to then come over here and, expand from that point. So, I mean, it's always looking to use an artwork I'd created that might be, like a random sort of undulating gradient, but then I might bring that in and use that as like on a torn off piece of paper in a 3D artwork. So it's like, I had some I always loved doing collage style. So that's kind of where it all really comes from, it was always this need to create assets. And I remember back in the day, I was just always Googling like free like birds and, like cutting them out and putting them in places. And it was like, I really need to be like in control of my own assets. I don't want to be buying like stock things. I can't afford that. So it was really out of necessity to just learn how to create assets that would then be incorporated in these collage work.
I'm interested. Just while you're talking about assets for use in digital art, I just want to get your take on, you must see it a lot, people that will just go to Turbo Squid or something, download it, relight, chuck some different materials on and send it up as an NFT, What's your feeling on that?
Yeah, I guess like I personally like I've done it. Like I've used assets for sure, but I have like even just the astronaut character of my own that I was like, I'm not going to learn anything if I'm just buying it. Like it was about really trying to better my modeling skills. So for me, it's always been about like learning the skill rather than just sort of like circumventing it. But I mean, it's honestly like having those 3D assets in a crunch, and especially if it's just for like even client work, then it's not so personal. It's sort of, but yeah, I mean, all these styles that, are really prevalent right now, like they're not going to last because, if I've spent 10 years on Instagram and I know like things come and go and it's like, what happened to that guy? Where did he go? And I just think unless you're willing to adapt and sort of evolve with the industry and the trends, then, it'll be fine for now. But I think you're better off trying to like learn the skill rather than just trying to like make a quick grab. But
Yeah.
it's also, yeah, you know, I don't know, like maybe people want to learn how to render and light and material better and they use a model for that. So it's
No.
like,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, you know, it's for personal reasons. I just would always try to like model things myself just to get better.
I think, I mean, they're like you said, you made a few points there about, you know, stock models or whatever when you're in time constraints and all that, and you just need to get something in that's working.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. That does make sense. And I don't have any problem with kit bashing things, because by the very nature, you should be not just using what's there. You should be taking the parts and making your own thing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's, you know, there is that. I just, you know, it's just an interesting kind of thing that there's so much of it. That's just why I wanted to kind of bring it up, I guess.
Yeah, I think because, you know, like a lot of the audience now that are suddenly interested in digital art don't have familiarity with these things are created. So they might not have any concept that there's a database of models that you can go and download and apply. So a lot of people might think that, you know, it's wow, like they did all that. So I'm kind of like, if someone's going to do that to me, like I want to be like able to say, yeah, I did do all that. So I think for me, it's really about like the pride in how much I labored over something.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, interesting. I think that's a valid point. And okay, well, a little aside over.
Yep.
With that being said, then how long are you typically working on a piece for?
Yeah, I mean, even I think the first NFT I put out was the Panther.
That's on
and
Foundation? No.
yeah,
Is it?
yeah,
Okay. I'm going to show
yeah.
that while we're talking about it. Let me find it.
But like that for me was like a good example of a piece that I, you know, created probably 6-7 years ago. It was originally a collaboration piece with Ben Johnston, who's a typographer, and you know, it was for me. I wanted to learn how to start sculpting, so I was like, I'm going to start sculpting this panther from scratch, and it was just one of those things that I would tinker with over the years and constantly like refresh and update and turn into something. And then it was really nice to get to a point where I was really happy with it and wanted to put that out as my first NFT. So it had been years in the making, but you know, incalculable hours. But then it is all about there's so many half-done ideas in my archives that I'm like, okay, it's time to bring that out, do that properly, finish it off. I've thought about it for so long now. But then it's like, I just think that there's so much just back and forth, and no one piece is sort of like I sit down and I do it till the end. It's just kind of, yeah. So I mean, it really is like, you know, I don't keep track of hours or time. It's really like until I'm finished with it. And you know, the latest piece I've been working on has been months, and it's gone through probably a dozen iterations and a dozen stages I've been happy with, but I constantly pod and proke, and then it poke and prod. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, I also have styles that are very like immediate satisfaction. You know, I love working with gradients on forms, and you know, I find it very like meditative to sort of sit on that and just sort of just not have a complex scene and just see how much I can get away with there. So I have ways of sort of satisfying myself quickly, and then also just projects that I just labor over that, you know, sort of these culmination of tons of ideas.
Okay. Yeah. So if you have no kind of track of like the hours that you're putting into a piece and all that stuff, like is it challenging to price the work?
Yeah, I mean, I work really closely with my agent, Matthew LeBaron at Much Presents. And I mean, honestly, like that was the best decision I made at that point in my career, was like working with him. And we've really grown our businesses side by side. But he is who I turn to for all pricing matters. And it is really like, I, you know, with my personal work, that is allowed to just sort of like fester and, you know, take time. But in terms of my commercial work, like I'm always spot on, like knowing how long my project's going to take and sort of managing my time that way that, it really is just about like, how complex is it? How many assets do you need? How many deliverables is going to be final? How much do we need to render? There's so many different things that I guess aren't obvious to people that aren't used to the process. So, just knowing like going from like sketch stage to building, like modeling to materials to lighting and rendering, that's such a long, detailed process. And I think like it's only just more over time that I get a better handle on the animation side of things, which has always been a challenge because, like I'm self-taught, and animation's one of those things again where it's like if I worked in an animation studio, I'd be much further along, but choosing to, take the reins myself and just do everything. I'm constantly like trying to figure it out and problem solve the whole way. So the more confident I get with animation, the easier it is to sort of time that as well. But I don't keep track. I don't typically charge by the hour. And I've done some random projects with agencies that'll want a day rate, but I typically just let my agent handle any price inquiries.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense to, hand it over to someone that deals with that kind of stuff. It sort of takes it away from you and, yeah.
I mean, it's headspace. It's like just making room to like be good at what you do and let other people handle what they're good at. So, I say that, but I still struggle to like find the right people to help me on certain projects. And it's one of those things that, moving into this space now, it's got me thinking that, a summer internship would be really fun to, bring someone in and show them the ropes a little bit. So now that I've got that, because, I'd get inquiries and I'm like, I'm sorry, I just work from my lounge room. I can't really have anyone helping out right now. I chose to really not grow my business for years because I didn't want to lose control. And, I'm able to turn down projects that don't feel right, that don't, I want to be able to like not have that pressure of somebody else, forcing me to take on projects or work hours that I don't need to, just to make sure they're okay. So, when things get a little bit more secure and, some big projects coming back in, then, I'd definitely be interested to like try and find help.
Yeah, for sure. While we're here, I wanted to talk to you about this piece as well, because this has this, I think you were talking about gradients and there's also this style that you have developed through like a typography, through typography. We haven't really touched on all the typography that you do. I mean, there's the 3D stuff, but there is this really cool technique that you developed and you've shared, and it's that smudging colors and stuff like that, and we can show that in a minute as well. But like, are you using that technique with this piece as well?
No, so I mean, like is
this painted? Just
so I mean, that's kind of like, and coming back to the idea of like, how do I use my different skill sets differently and enhance like another one? So with like that smudge script originally, like that was, probably almost 10 years ago, I sort of was just playing. It was just one of those days where I was like, what does every tool in Photoshop do? What can I do? And it was just kind of like playing around with stuff. And I had just like a starry background and I just smudged it with the smudge tool and just sort of like, I was like, well, what if I change the brush? So I changed the different brushes and I was going through and then my buddy Daniel Trindle, who was working at Vault 49 with me at the time, he's like, well, you actually got to check sample all layers, and then that would put it on, its own layer above it. And you could, because I was going through and actually deep etching out all the letters after I'd done the smudges.
No way.
So he just gave me that tip and he was like, oh, it'll just create on its own layer. So it just like, and like those balls and egg things there, like that was just, another piece that I'd made for Instagram. And I was like, it's always like creating the asset to influence the next piece. So for me, like the brush script, smudge script, it was its own thing, but then it was requests coming in to animate it. And I was like, okay, well, if I have to animate it, I'm definitely going to do that in 3D. So I had to invent another way in C4D to create brush script. And it was also, I was limited by the pixel size of doing the smudge script. So I needed to have like higher resolution capabilities. And it was, okay, well, I can do that in 3D. So I would build like lofted surfaces with all my splines, and then I would map, the brush script to it. So then in that bird piece, it was like, well, I love doing like anything birds. I'm always like trying to do that. And it was like, well, okay, I can use this control of the 3D surfaces to begin to illustrate. So that's really where that sort of came from.
Yeah. So this was, because I'm looking at your 29 rooms piece without showing it, because I just wanted to check with you. Is that the 3D? Is that 3D?
It is.
So this is what you're describing.
So wow, that's a 3D interpretation of, what originally started out with the smudge script. And it was like with that piece there, that's taking a landscape in C4D and making it spherical, and then mapping a spline wrap to my splines. So it was really about just like trying to use the 3D, like the animation capabilities in C4D to manipulate my textures. So it's just kind of like how many ways can you skin a cat kind of thing.
Yeah. And this became a mural?
Yeah, so that was Colossal Murals painted that. That's in Brooklyn. So it was like a giant sort of fun house on the inside with different rooms full of different art installations. And I worked with their photographer who took the live action shots, and then I would build out those scenes with all these that's X particles, and just created like a bunch of different animations to promote the show, and then it was creating the mural that they then painted, and it was a great little showcase for sure. That's
awesome. Really cool. That's great. And also just repurposing a technique, for a different medium.
It's kind of like, my work just has like a thread of color that kind of binds it all, but it's just kind of trying to find different ways to apply the textures, use the forms, work with the tools that you know how to use best.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to talk about that, because we can move into how you use technology and, new tech and all this kind of stuff. And you've been experimenting with AR for quite some time. And it kind of continues what we were just talking about, because the birding piece that you did for like Adobe, that has that kind of feel to it with the typography and then you're kind of, and the text and stuff. People should probably come and watch this video. And also, I think, does this still work? You can scan this QR code and get the app.
Yeah, it should be out, and then you can, if you have Aero, you can download it. But again, it was kind of like, these projects are so awesome because the client's like, well, we just want you to showcase like how you would use AR. And I was like, well, I'll do bird illustrations, I'll do typography, I'll do 3D, I'll do, hand done textures. And, it was really trying to find a way to, do all the things I like and show like how I would want to use AR. So, it was a lot of fun to like build these, actually design the postcards first. And then the idea was to then put those in the cafes and things around town here, and people would pick it up and scan the QR code on the back and, just experience the scene for themselves. And it was, trying to highlight some of the interactive elements within Aero. You can, the proximity triggers. So if you come within I think there's a meter of the actual bird in the scene, it would trigger their bird call, and it would also like make their typographic name pop up. So it's kind of like, great, like this is how I'm going to show interaction and using my work in AR. So it's been one of those things where AR started out was like, I learned 3D, and then it was like people want you to develop the visual style of their AR concept, and it was like I would pass off 3D files and asset sheets and things like that they would then put into Unity or different programs like that. And then it was like 2018, Snap reached out about starting to just beta test their spectacles.
Yes.
So it was like the version 2 of those. Morgan and I got to fly down to LA, and they spent a week with us teaching us like Lens Studio, road testing the glasses, creating a lens that would then be showcased. And it's led to a lot of good partnerships with them on projects. It could be a music video we've done for artists that want to incorporate some typography, so we would create the lens. And with the version 2 specs, you could actually have the Z depth. You could have your objects go behind things that's going to record the actual depth of the scene. So we were experimenting a lot with that, showing how that worked. And then we did another one recently using their latest specs, just trying to again like work with our Museum of Lucid Dreams concept. But AR is one of those things where like last year I realized like most of my time was sort of in that world, and it wasn't something I've sort of necessarily sought out, but it's become obvious just how much it's going to be incorporated in everything, especially education, I think.
I think that's such an obvious application for it, but an exciting one too. Not just entertainment. There's going to be ways of teaching new techniques, and just having the manual kind of right there in front of you, and you can kind of like find where you need to be, and have an animation play of how something would fit together and all that kind of stuff. And
I saw a post yesterday of they were showcasing a new lens, and it was like an origami directional video or AR experience, where it was like you have your paper there, and it's like, okay, fold, and then you tap in the next step. So it's like it really is trying to think cleverly about how suddenly you were an artist just creating statics, and now you're creating animations, and now you're creating another level of interactivity that suddenly I've got to like think deeper about everything I create and how it could be interacted with. And it's just one of those things where it's like I'm still just very like new to the scene of AR, but I've been fortunate to work on some really cool projects with people like Snap and Aero.
Yeah. And it's kind of like all these kind of future or fantasy user interfaces that you see in the Marvel films and stuff, are they going to be it's just coming closer to that now.
I mean it's getting real close. It's exciting because using the new specs, they actually have like the visible interface on your glasses. So like the version before didn't. You had to kind of like do everything post recording and then do it in Lens Studio and apply your lenses afterwards. But now it's really cool to actually live test, using controls on the specs themselves. And
is that doing some kind of like how long you're gazing at something for? It will be like select, then kind of like highlight, move down. Wow.
There's a lot of different sort of controls that you can do. There's a swipe pad on the side that has like, you can scroll up and it'll exit out, and then you can like tap and interact, and it's like move forward. There's like games, and it's like, okay, and then it's like use your eyes to move it. So you kind of, there's so many times where you just like do crazy things. And it's like, well, it's always so embarrassed like around town trying to like record content, just like, it's okay, guys. Like they do something. They're just like dancing around.
Yeah, these original ones, they kind of look pretty big and chunky anyway. But I guess they're kind of bringing the form factor down a bit to be more like a nice pair of sunglasses or something.
It'll probably just be contact lenses eventually.
Well, yeah. You will see. That's always the thing. Once you get over the, do I look like an idiot using this or not? Then once that's gone out of the way, it's
always the first one that looks stupid.
Right. Are you, while we're talking about new tech and kind of stuff like that, are you using Unreal, or is that on your radar for this year?
It is on my radar. It's one of those things where, I mean, it's always a list of like, who do I give my time to? Is it ZBrush? Is it Unreal? Is it Substance and all this sort of different stuff? So,
yeah,
eventually I want to know everything, but Unreal seems to be the one where, especially in this, with the advances of NFTs, that's where I want to be starting to explore how I showcase my work. So that's why I think that Unreal for me is going to be I'd love to dedicate a lot of time to it this year. But hopefully I can.
Yeah, I'm definitely keen to explore it a bit more. I have, a friend who's doing like virtual production now, and so you've got kind of it's kind of like a Mandalorian on a smaller scale, but you know what I mean? It's that kind of idea.
Yeah.
It's
exciting, and just having learned so many programs over the years now, I'm like, well, I've done it once, and I'm like, there's better resources to learn from now, so I should be able to do it. It's time and a good brief for yourself to like produce something.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah. It's doing something for you, which actually helps you learn the tools.
Exactly.
Always,
yeah. I mean, that was kind of like why I always gravitated towards typography. It was like, it was a brief ready to go. It was a phrase, or it was, just letter forms, and it was something I knew like it had to resemble that. It had to communicate that somehow, but how can I do it a little differently? And, try and create different type that I've never seen before.
Yeah. I want to talk about, I think we're going to move into kind of crypto and NFTs, but let's just start with the cards, because it's not your first one, the crypto edition.
No.
I think, we'll jump over to here because there's a bit more to it. And so you can see down here, this is from edition 3. And there's a few images to the left of this Seven of Hearts, where it's kind of telling a story of how you got to that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I thought I'd share that with you just to sort of explain where that, like the Seven of Hearts anchor piece came from. But my good buddy, Ollie Munden, aka Mega Munden, I worked with him. I did work experience with him when I went to Chichester. I did like a European trip, and then I spent a week learning with him, and then we've been friends ever since. But he worked at I Love Dust, still does, and he is an amazing illustrator, but he really got into tattoo art and did tattoo books. And I was always like, man, I love tattoo art. I don't want to be a tattoo artist, but how could I do it my way? So I always had this idea of like realizing tattoo art in a 3-dimensional sense. So the leg actually belongs to Gav Strange, and Ollie did that illustration for him. So it was cool to go from like his sketch to a tattoo to a 3D piece. And then it was, when it came to doing the playing arts card, I was like, oh, let's do an anchor and try and hide the Seven of Hearts in there. So even like my Panther that I've released as an NFT I was really inspired by tattoo art and cake, and just seeing how different inspirations can kind of come together and create something new. But I think I've always loved the idea of incorporating tattoo art into what I do in a different way. It was nice to sort of take that original piece and reinvent it for this.
Very cool. I can see. You got the. I can't move my mouse away because it won't. There we go. So we've got the 5 around here, and there's almost, is that like
the 2
kind of floral element almost, and then the 2 here. Nice. The 3 of clubs is the one for the crypto edition, and it's almost like you've given us these like zoomed up versions of they're almost like 3 characters.
That's exactly.
Do you want to talk about each one, and I can just play through?
I guess the like the overall concept was kind of like how I saw, this sort of NFT explosion happening, where it was like I'm kind of the brain at the bottom with this overwhelming amount of ideas and not knowing which one to like grasp onto. So you just kind of like let them out and see which ones catch. So it was kind of like the brain releasing the ideas that are eaten up by the blockchain, and then the viewer is at the top, trying to like, just be the audience. So it was kind of like create a blockchain audience in a way. And I think I'm always just like, I'll create any kind of artwork and put a couple of eyes in there, and then automatically it's got a little bit more character to it, literally. But for me, it's always like, how can I, do the same kind of character design, but make them feel very, very different, very representative of what they are. But, I tried to introduce a little bit of laser eyes and, just a bit more of a discerning collector at the top, and me just with like too many ideas to articulate.
That's funny. Did this idea come to you like immediately, or were you going through a few iterations?
No, it was definitely like, how do I see the scene sort of unfolding? And it was, it was like this kind of, it was a nice linear sort of story that came together, but there were some early iterations, and it was always just about like, I loved the way that the clubs was shown on the icons for this crypto edition. It was just the 3 circles. So I really wanted to sort of like take inspiration from that and have it laid out in a similar way. But yeah, it was kind of like, how crazy do I get with it? Is it different eyes in different places? Is one a mind's eye? And it was just kind of, I kind of do a lot of tricks and see what's speaking to me, and then I run with it.
Yeah. Because you design, you do kind of print stuff or did you kind of print this card out and you kind of like see how it worked as a physical item as well as, the digital?
No, I didn't. No, I really didn't consider it. I was really excited with the idea of it being a fully digital piece.
Yeah.
Because, there's so many different stages through my career where it's always like you're kind of trying to tweak what you're making to fit, like especially with print stuff, when you try, like I've tried to sell prints a few times over my career to a dismal response. And it's always just like, how do I sort of dial back what I'm doing, in animation and 3D work to try and resonate on a print side. So now that you kind of have an endless amount of possibilities of what you can do, I just sort of really, indulge in that and just sort of made sure that it had a necessary amount of animation to sort of read the narrative. But yeah, I didn't even consider it being printed. Okay.
Well, you took it to, what it was, and, it's a digital collection, like first and foremost. Yeah, but I'm definitely excited to see them in print. And also in AR as well, once we start using the app and stuff like that. So, I think there's some really cool things coming for that. But I think, do you have, you've looked at the other cards in this, and obviously been involved with playing arts for a long time, and you've mentioned a few artists that are actually in this edition as well. Do you have any favorites in this collection?
You're gonna have to scroll through.
Oh, I'll scroll through.
There we go.
Yeah. There's a lot, obviously, and it's
I
quite
think
hard.
I own your card, actually.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Wow. I think I minted yours. I'm not sure, but yeah, I do definitely. Obviously, well, you mentioned Chuck Anson, so
I actually love Orgasm piece. I'm always a big fan of Orgasm stuff.
Yeah.
But I love that the one that was the Guy Fawkes mask that was near the top there.
Oh, okay. Let me
It was like it rotated around.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that piece.
Yes.
And is it fescue? Is that how you say it? The one next to it.
Fesk.
Fesk?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I thought it was a really solid series. I thought there was so many good artworks in it. And that's the thing. Like I mentioned yesterday. And is it Fatash? Fatash? Just went past. He does some great work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I mentioned yesterday, we had a little chat, and I just sort of, for me, I really tried to limit how many people in the industry I was following, just because, I was trying not to let it influence what I was making, or even get down on what I was making, that it might be something similar, or like, and then it would stop me in my tracks about like following an instinct that I had because I was worried I would copy someone. So
okay,
it was really like almost a revisitation to the space this year of like getting caught up with like who's doing certain things, who's really good at what they're doing, and innovating. So for me, it's sort of been a new time to just sort of get to know who's doing what. Because it was just like, I remember feeling like, oh man, I'm getting down. Like everyone's doing amazing stuff. I just need to stop looking. So it was, on Instagram, I just tried to like unfollow a lot of people back in the day, and, definitely detrimented, some good relationships that I might have built over time. But I think it was just for me, I had to really focus on trying to find like a unique voice in what I was doing.
Mm. Yeah. Well, let's come back to what brought you into crypto art initially. Do you want to just describe that journey that you've taken to where we are now?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think I was like most of us that, saw Beeple's initial sort of big drop. Then you were like, oh, wow, like, wait, what's happening? And I saw Bill Ellis talk about like, oh, NFTs are like the best thing that's happened. And I'm like, what's an NFT? Like, it was kind of one of those situations where I really wasn't on the radar of what was happening in the space. And, it's nice because, like I said, I was always just trying to make a couple bucks selling prints in a style of work that really wasn't representative of what I do. But just because it would work with a screen print or something like that. So when it was the idea that, what I've considered art for a long time and sort of definitely been looked down on in terms of digital art's relevance, like I think what people are doing with computers is just like, what people did with paintbrush back in the day. So, and we're creating things that no one's ever seen before. So for me, it was really trying to like get involved, but not really just run away with releasing stuff that I created over the years, because a lot of the stuff I've created over the years I'm not immensely proud of anymore. It's, I'm constantly trying to evolve what I'm doing, and I'm only as happy as my last piece, really.
Yeah. I mean, give or take, there's like, 1,200 or so posts on your Instagram. So you have a back catalogue that you could just kind of access and go, yeah, there's something, if that was the way you're inclined. But, having talked to you a little bit before this, I know that, that just wouldn't satisfy you. And so you kind of really care about what you're putting out because it's on the blockchain forever.
Exactly. I think that was the biggest thing I took note of in the beginning, was like, it's on there forever, kind of, you can't take it back. And I was like, I don't want to feel like it was a rush to get, my old catalog out and some stuff that people might recognize that, and like my smudge script stuff, I haven't done that in years, purely for the fact that it became what I was known for. And I was like, that's going to run its course. It's going to be boring. And I have to be thinking about what's next in terms of what I'm doing artistically. So for me, it was really just, I do something, and then it's like, how does that evolve into the next phase of my career? So I didn't see the relevance of releasing a lot of old artwork. But that's why I loved releasing the panther, and that bird was, a special one I created for my mum, because, she was supposed to come out during COVID, like when COVID times hit, they all got cancelled, and I wanted to do a print. I got it professionally framed and sent to her and my auntie, and it was a special piece for me, so I wanted to release that, and also set up future series in areas that I want to extend. But fortunately I had a really busy year with client work that there's definitely a lot of confidence issues around the whole scene. When things don't sell and you sort of you lose a little confidence there, but now I've been in the scene for a year, you go, okay, there is a cycle to this, just be patient. Everyone says be patient, but it's easier to hear it than to take it on. But I really want to just put out stuff that has been labored over, and it's not just something quick. And I've had a lot of contact from people about doing character design profile projects, and I'm just like, I just don't have that time and energy to really do that at the moment.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's definitely a lot to take on a PFP project or a collection of that kind, that magnitude, I guess. It would definitely sort of take over, and it sounds like you're not ready to give up on the client work yet, and to sort of take on NFTs full time.
Yeah, I mean, and especially even with social media engagement. I've built up over a decade on Instagram, and then suddenly it's just become almost useless to me. It's just a portfolio page. And I was off Twitter for a decade, and now I'm like, okay, I've got to get on Twitter and try and convince people that I'm worth paying attention to in terms of my work. So, it's one of those sort of, it's sort of starting from ground again in some aspects, but I think if I just have to be confident in the kind, the level of work I put out, and just, hoping that just sort of takes care of itself.
Yeah. I mean, if you can bring your, 100,000 followers over to Twitter, then, you'll be all set. But
I wish.
It's a different game, isn't it? The crypto Twitter,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to open up a post of yours, actually, because it's. I mean, we can look at a previous piece of yours. Wonder if that will do it. No. It's your next super rare piece, I guess. I guess we haven't talked about that. You're there, and there is a piece that you've already sold on there, and I think it ties into Museum of Lucid Dreams as well. So let's talk about the piece first, and we'll come back to Museum, and then then maybe go back to the new piece and just sort of go around there. So this is it, and so this was 9 months ago or something that you put this up, I think, and
I think it sort of talks to the point about a lot of what I just said about it was okay, I've done lots of Instagram posts and artworks and sort of fleshing out ideas, and it was really about okay, how do I give these a new life in something with a grander scale and narrative around it. So it was sort of digging through a lot of the work and ideas that I'd done over the years and trying to find a really well-balanced sort of Where's Wally kind of I Spy book kind of ideas of keeping people interested. And I think that's really what I've tried to do, is just hold people's attention for, more than 10 seconds, let it loop and just sort of explore the scene for a while. But it's kind of, it's almost a materialization of where I see my brain most of the time, where it's, tons of little ideas all just sort of taking up space. But it's been, the Museum of Lucid Dreams for me, saying, is a playground, a virtual playground for me to try and build my own narrative and visual style in a way that, it has some longevity to it, and it can, could be a story, could be a movie, could be a book, could be anything, and it's just a real culmination of, I mean, because this is all it was. Before that was just like a page on my website where it was like everything that doesn't fit in something comes here. So I'm kind of just sort of going back through everything again and seeing how it can all combine and to create something new. So I mean, you can even see like that panther there, like that wasn't the final iteration. That was, you know, like a couple of years before I picked it up again and finished it off. So you know, it's really just trying to find a way how all the experimentations have a bigger life to them.
This gives you just a lot of opportunity to play with different styles and just, you know, figure it all out, I guess, in a free way.
Yeah. So there's like actually a few pieces in there by my wife. So, you know, like working with her, like all the basketball stuff is a lot of her work. So we tried to even just we started here, and this was well before you know, crypto came on the scene. So I'd always had this idea of how could I build a world of all the randomness that I create. Yeah, so I mean that's why I want to eventually build out worlds in Unreal and have people go in and explore them. Like I see the first Museum of Lucid Dreams piece I put on Super Rare is more like the comic book cover, you know, and then you sort of would go into that world and be able to explore it and have little stories and interactions, and it's just again like time and effort.
Awesome. Yeah. So the idea of like, you know, metaverses and things like that is one that appeals to you. Then this would be you'd perhaps buy land somewhere and create the museum and then have people come to it.
Yeah. I mean, because I've been thinking about like, you know, what would it actually look like in a virtual space, and you know, I can see like some of my eyes that I do. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I love Voltron engagement sequences and things like that. So I love the sort of mechanized idea of things opening and unlocking the eyes and sort of venturing into the imagination. So that's kind of where it's always been. And then, like, that's how I feel like AR really is. It's just these lucid dreams. It's like you're presenting this whole unreal world that we're sort of feeling is becoming real. So it's this sort of waking dream style that, you know, I'm trying to channel into the pieces and just sort of like have little nuggets that could become their own character in time and lead off, and just really like having an endless amount of choose your own adventures to really like play with.
Yeah. Adventure time.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and like we love anime. Like we've just watched almost 1,000 episodes of One Piece, and it's, for me, has been like such a beautiful lesson in patience in storytelling, and you know, has been telling it for over 20 years, and yeah, I mean, I find a lot of inspiration from things like anime and cartoons constantly.
Yeah, very cool. The new piece that's coming to Super Rare is the one that is in this post here. I don't know if that's gone for... it doesn't like it. All right, we'll just exit that for some reason. It won't let me play it full screen. But people can come over to this post and just take a look. And so you're saying the last thing to do is to create the audio for this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is something... presumably, are you going to create the audio yourself or collaborate or use stock, or what's in terms of, you know, your art, like how much does audio play a part?
Yeah, I think it's coming back to that, the idea I was mentioning earlier about like the idea to create your own stock assets. You know, it was not relying on finding things, but being very self-sufficient. So, you know, my wife has, you know, she did piano as a child and she really wants to get back into it. So we've started buying some synthesizers and things and just being beginners at audio. So it's exciting, and it's suddenly feasible to create something that people might care about, attached to the artwork. So I think because, like me, I have my phone constantly on silent. If I scroll through Instagram, I don't always hear the sound. So it was never like completely necessary to have sound with my animations. But, if it's something someone's going to buy and showcase, then I'd love for them to have like a fully thought out experience. So, I want to work closely with my wife to like figure out just some nice sort of ambient soundscape stuff that, it's I see this sort of piece and this series of almost that the veil between the world we see and the world we can't. And it's like, what would the subatomic level look like if you could get down in there? And it could be just complete madness, So I'm always thinking in terms of like the scale of the universe and how you can represent that. And,
it's like Ant-Man or something, those sequences.
Exactly. So I try and like add a little humor into it without being too serious, but also like, it's very important for me to always like focus on balancing my art, and I always work on strong compositions, and that's why I just tweak things just constantly, and I can just sort of massage them until I'm like, okay, cool, that's the last time I'll render overnight, and then I'll stick with it and put some audio on it. But yeah,
I was going to ask you about that, because it's it's not paint that dries, it's a digital form. So when does the digital paint ever dry?
Yeah, I think that's a big issue with me in terms of like why I've probably released a limited amount of NFTs so far. It's just that I'm my own worst critic, so I'll always find an issue, and then the last thing I want to do is put it out and then be like, oh, I missed it, and it's on the blockchain forever. So I'm very aware of just, I have to put my best work out, and sometimes, it'll be better next time. So, I mean, I even see that with the original piece I put down and the next one that'll come out. It's, I tried to learn some lessons from the first one and implement them in the next, and just grow a series that way.
Yeah, that's all you can do, really. But like, it's interesting, I guess, if anyone is looking to collect your work, they know that how meticulous you are about it, and how much you care about it. It's it's pretty cool to hear. So, I guess like in this coming year, stylistically, where do you see your art heading?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is, like, I've been in this sort of hyper real collage world for a little while now, and I'll probably step back, and I definitely go through phases of doing a lot of pencil sketching, and sometimes that'll like take a little while and I'll get back to it. But I know that like my creativity is always better when I'm sketching. So I really want to be, giving that more time this year. But artistically, I just want to have a better idea of where I want the Museum of Lucid Dreams to go, and sort of really like nail that down and invest time in how that's going to look to present, like building its own website, building its own sort of portal, aside from Velvet Spectrum, because that's what, like, Velvet Spectrum for me is like, it's been 15 years now, and it's had a lot of different lives and different purposes and supported me in different ways, that it feels like there needs to be a new way of presenting my work. So that was why I was like, I need a museum of my own that can just sort of like grow with me over time, and it won't be infiltrated by commercial work. It'll just be purely artistic. And Velvet Spectrum can always just do like experimentations and commercial work, and it has its own life there. But I felt like I needed to separate it somehow and sort of be much more uninhibited to explore things with the museum. And it's an excuse to learn things like Unreal and ZBrush, and see how that can sort of yield new results. Yeah.
So you're into sort of digital sculpting and things like that. Are there any other kind of tools that you're using? For example, like for me, I'm really having a lot of fun with Procreate, and just kind of getting into that, and just using the iPad, Apple Pencil, that kind of stuff, and just I find it like a way of planning work and stuff is, you know, and obviously treating it as a digital sketchbook as well. Having a lot of fun with that. But I mean, also from music side as well, there's a really cool app that you may be interested in. I don't know, or if you may have it already. It's called Synth One.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, take a look at Synth One. Yeah, really good fun. And you know, you were saying about like creating your own music, and you've got like that. What was it? EP11 synth as well. The little thing there, and it's just
they're just using the EP1, but it is one of those things where you give it time and then you step away and it's like, oh, I have to go and start from scratch again. So I'm kind of at that relationship with music at the moment. So it's just got to like stick at it, output, you know, have those little wins and just sort of figure out, just like I did with design, like how to make it better each time. And that was like even the first audio I did on the Museum of Lucid Dreams piece on Super Rare was, I just sort of was like looking at my animation, just ding, ding, ding. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll put that in and I'll put some like, you know, little ambient to it. And, you know, it was just, for me, had no expectation of being Mozart. It was just about actually creating an audio piece that could work. You know, it didn't have to be amazing. It was just a first attempt. And I almost relished that it's not perfect because I'll be like, oh, that was where I started. And one day I'll be able to go, oh, I made a really cool track.
Yeah, dude, I have a shared experience with a short film that I did a while back, and it was just like, it needed music. I didn't want to choose stock because I'd kind of like, unfortunately it was like, I was like, I've already done the picture, right? So I was just playing with this app and just, you know, hitting some keys and like doing something that could be a beat or something, and I was like, right, so I'll just do the parts here and just watch it through and just see what fits. And then there were some happy accidents along the way, and it was like, well, that's kind of working, let's just put all that together.
I think happy accidents is a good actual, like, you know, like I think about like failing constantly is like the only way to learn is to fail. And that's why, like, going back to the idea of even stock models, it's like I'd rather like make all the mistakes and it doesn't look perfect, but I learned a lot through that. And I think that's what's going to happen with doing this music, is just like failing and not really like, you know, getting bogged down in it, but just feeling like, oh, I've achieved a little something and just going from there.
Yeah, and it just carries you through to the next one. You build upon it and become better and stronger and all that. So yeah, for sure. All right. I'm gonna. Okay, so yeah, we've covered that. We've covered a few other bits. Bit of a random one, but like if you found that you had a wallet and discovered it had 100 ETH in it, what would you do?
Ooh, 100 ETH.
Because there's some things that you could go on.
Yeah. I'd have to, I mean, the standout artists I've discovered in this space would have to be Ness Graphics. I love his work. Untitled Army, I'd have to have a piece by them. And I think that's where I'm at, is like, you know, like Raf Rossetti, like those guys, where it was like, you know, I saw their drops happening and it was like, I didn't have any ETH to buy anything originally. And then now it's like collector's edition only. And I'm like, oh man, I was like, I should have just been like, quick. But yeah, if I had an 100 ETH, I wouldn't have to worry about it then. But honestly, like with the limited money I've made in the space, like I had a couple good sales on things, but I immediately went and bought some of my best friends in the industry just because I wanted to like support them. And it's always been that way with buying prints and badges and pins and hats and whatever anyone's selling. I'll always just try and like nab something to support them. But it's nice to make a considerable donation, or not donation even, but like a contribution to their art. And because I have, a lot of faith in them. So yeah, I mean, out of everyone, I'd say probably those top three, I'd love a piece by them.
Okay, interesting. That's interesting. You'd sort of go down that route. Like, other people would probably maybe throw it at a Bored Ape or something and just kind of see where that goes. feel that that's where your interests
No,
lie. You know, you're more of
no.
perhaps a supporter of the
I'm
of the
not,
artist
yeah.
rather than the company kind of
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, I don't know if I'm jaded by just how many PFP projects are out now,
Right.
where it's like, I think just the multiple iterations of what was successful, it just kind of like, it takes the fun out of it for me. I'm not surprised by any of it anymore. So it's like, I love to just like look at someone's skill on showcase. And I think that's what it's always come down to for me is like, what I want to be able to execute what they're doing. Like, I have to be seeing somebody doing something that I can't understand how they're doing it. So for me, it's like I'm not necessarily that interested in the profile sort of scene, but more in the like labored art.
Yep. Get it. I get it. You mentioned the kind of collector only editions and stuff like that. Is that something that's in your mind for later down the road? You know, you're going to kind of
I think I mean it's one of those. You know, it's been just a year of paying attention and seeing how people are, you know, trying to redefine how they interact with their audience. And for me, it was just trying to get someone to like a post. You know, now it's so much more. You can actually build relationships with people who are invested in your work and how they could help you grow as an artist. So, yeah, I mean, so much going on all the time. I just have a lot of trouble keeping up.
I was going to ask you if there's anything that really frustrates you about the NFT space at the moment. Is there anything that needs to be like improved upon from an artist's point of view?
Oh, spam. I think no, I don't know. Like,
because
there could be a lot. Yeah,
it's, you know, being visible is difficult, isn't it? There is that. I don't know. I'll let you speak.
No, I mean, the thing is, like, I don't feel educated enough to comment on the space, really, in terms of, like, how it could be better. I think I'm such a newbie to it that it's just, like, I'm trying to listen to who's, you know, leading the way, really. I'm definitely one of those people that sits back and watches for a while before I enact. So for me, it's really about like, what is it I'm trying to get out of the space, and like, if I'm selling my work, like, what am I trying to offer to someone that would want them to buy it? And I know that, like, you know, I'm a pretty introverted guy, and I don't have, you know, I don't share a lot of personal sort of anecdotes and things like that typically. That, you know, I really want to understand, like, why someone would want my work, and, you know, and to give them something to believe in for the long term, that it's not going to be like, I'm going to disappear and you'll have no, you know, your investment goes with it. So it really is just thinking like long term about how the work will have a thread run through it. And it's not like I have to know what the end goal is now, but just keeping that in mind with every sort of like decision I make in the space, and just feeling like that it is connected to some extent.
You kind of hinted on, like, you know, wanting to know why someone would want to collect your work. So I guess you're open to, you know, having an open dialogue with collectors and just kind of getting to know them as people, I guess, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I've only had a couple of collectors, and it's been nice to have, you know, some brief conversations with them. And, you know, the one guy that bought my super EPs, I couldn't track him down. I didn't know who he was, but he followed me the other day, and I was like, hey, you know, I wanted to know where you were. Like, just wanted to say thanks so much. It meant a lot because, you know, if someone likes my work, then that's awesome. I just, you know, there's a lot of people who think that they should like my work or something because I have followers, but that's not really like where I enjoy interactions is like, if someone knows like, oh, like, yeah, I saw you started that a couple of years ago and you've been working on this, like, I'm always down to talk about that stuff. So I'm just surprised when I hear people know my work, or, you know, because like you can have 100,000 followers on Instagram, but it doesn't feel that way. You know, you have a few people that really show up and support you, but that's more what matters to me, is like actual, you know, intimate connections with people rather than like just more and more followers on Instagram. And that was why, you know, I knew what people were clicking on when I was making it, and I would refuse to do it because I was just so, I knew that I was leading myself into a pigeonhole because I would just continue to create the same artwork because I knew it would be liked. So that was why, like, I gave up on a lot of that typography work. It was just, I knew that was the one that everyone would recognize. And I'm like, I don't want to just be like a recognized post that, you know, like, oh yeah, and move on. It's like, how can I be evolving and growing? So that's why I definitely like give up on styles, but and then I try and reinvent them in a new way.
Which is comes back to the Museum of Lucid Dreams, the expression, the way that you can just, you know, try things out and figure it all out. And I think that's, you know, that's awesome. That is awesome to have. So, I mean, what's exciting you now for this year?
My new studio space, I guess. Yeah, it's exciting. I think it's just, you know, like I just had a desk against the wall, and it wasn't inspiring. So I think having a change of my routine is actually what I'm looking forward to most this year, being out the house. But just like taking it a bit more seriously as well. I've been very like comfortable almost in my work and the jobs I'm taking on. And, you know, I'm always trying to take on things that challenge me. So for me, it's going to be about like fixing up my animation reel, getting that locked in, and sort of really understanding like, you know, what I'm capable of. I think that's all I'm always trying to like figure out, is like, how much can I do? And, you know, like I work with my wife, but, you know, we work together for a couple of years and she really helps run the business, and I do, you know, 100% of the artwork, but she's going to move into like her own thing and, you know, figure things out from there, because, you know, she spent a decade modeling before we met. And then she was always an illustrator. And when she met me, we started sort of exploring digital creative tools, and she, you know, she can do it all now, and she has such a great understanding of the process that it means she can help run the business and talk to clients and do things like that. So it's really about like trying to, you know, get a better grasp on what we do as a couple, and how that can sort of better complement each other. It's kind of been like, can you help with this right now? But, you know, it's really sort of laying out some goals this year to achieve and grow the business together, and let her sort of get more into the music and get more into like, you know, she loves doing photography because she was always on the other side of the lens, and, you know, now she'll be able to do things, and, you know, we have space to do a lot of stuff. We had a job once where we got a green screen in our living room, and it only went up as high as the roof. Like, it wasn't enough, and I had to stand back in the kitchen to like fit her in the shot so I could crop around her. And it's just like, I've always just had to scrap my way through a lot of projects, but to have like an actual space to achieve bigger ideas is going to be really exciting.
Oh, that's awesome. That does sound like exciting. I can tell you as well, like, you know, like I said, just having a space to go to is just freeing.
Yeah, the separation of work and home is going to be really exciting for me, because, you know, like I'll sit at home and have dinner, and then it's like, well, I guess I could just sit at my desk, and I end up sitting there and then just, you know, twiddling my thumbs, and it's like, all right, I just need to chill out and read a book or something.
Yeah. I think it's great that you and your wife have this, you know, this partnership for the artwork as well as all the other, you know, things that go with it, the music side and all that kind of stuff. And I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, how that progresses and where you both take it. So when do you know when the new piece is going to be on Super Rare? Just so we can mention that.
Let's say,
are you going to tweak it for another 6 months? And
no, I'm pretty happy with how it looks visually. It's just going to be about actually sitting down and creating some audio for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's pretty much ready to go. I mean, there's a couple of things I see and I'm like, I could fix it, so I probably will.
You will.
So I might do one last pass. I definitely will. Yeah, I'll do one last pass and then I'll render it out. We'll make some audio, but it'll just be a couple of minute tweaks to things that you probably wouldn't notice from there to here.
Yeah, we'll come back and let us know when it's ready, and
I will.
And we'll talk about it in the Discord.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, thanks so much, dude. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Oh man, it's been a pleasure for me. Always a pleasure chatting to artists that have been part of this project, and I just love learning about your process and like I said, there's, like I said, that splash screen. I was like, oh well, cinema 4D. Like it's been big part of my life for a long time.
Thank you to Playing Arts as well for including me in 2 editions already. It's always so nice to be like one amongst so many good artists. So these projects are awesome, and it was a real hoot to be included.
Awesome, dude. Thank you. Well, we got a POAP that's exclusive to this episode. If you're in the Discord right now, you will be able to claim one of these. So I'll be dishing out those codes after the show. Luke, thanks once again, dude. I really appreciate it. Also, really appreciate the community for supporting Playing Arts Project. And there's something that Luke touched on is like, the people that kind of are, you don't need like thousands and thousands of people. It's like the people that are kind of showing up. I really appreciate everyone who I see some regular names here, and the ones that do show up, and it's definitely appreciated. And so thanks everyone for coming in and joining, and thank you, Luke, once again.
Thanks, Andy.
Well, we'll see you in another episode of the Playing Arts Podcast. I say bye.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.